Good morning and welcome to The Art of Composition. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. I wanted to do a quick video before the weekend to explain some of the differences between the harmonic armature, also known as the 14-line grid, compared to dynamic symmetry, which consists of a series of root rectangles. If you're online and you do a search on dynamic symmetry, you might see the phrase root rectangles. The dynamic symmetry system of design is made up of root rectangles 2, 3, 4, and 5, the root 5, and the golden section. And you can learn more about that in the book A Simple Application of Dynamic Symmetry by Mikhail Jacobs. You can find that on my website for free. But what you see on my screen is the harmonic armature, is the 14-line grid. And one thing I really like about the harmonic armature is that it doesn't matter what size your canvas is. So for example, you could go to AC Moore and grab any size canvas off the shelf, bring it home, and draw out your 14 lines. The 14 lines never change. They're always created the same way, irregardless of the size of the canvas you're working on. So in my opinion, this makes it a little bit easier to learn, because unlike dynamic symmetry, where you're using specific sized rectangles, because that's how you break down a root rectangle, and I'll show you that in a little bit. You're always dealing with specific size rectangles, where the 14-line armature, you could make up any size rectangle you wanted, and you're always drawing the same 14 lines. But let me show you, using this grid, of how you can create a few divisions. And for those that are familiar with the rule of thirds, this is where it's derived from. So let me just quickly show you something. To demonstrate how the artist is getting the rule of thirds, they're intersecting. Let me try that again. Change that to black so you can actually see it. There you go. You can drop a horizontal and vertical line wherever a series of diagonal lines meet, meaning 2 or more. And within this harmonic armature, I'm creating divisions on thirds. And I think I'm getting this right. And then I can drop another horizontal line right here. And I immediately have a rule of thirds grid. Now, as I said before, it doesn't matter what size the canvas is. So you could take a different size rectangle, meaning a canvas. You could draw the same 14 lines out on it, and you would still have the rule of thirds, assuming that you're dividing it at these particular points in the armature. And of course, you can create divisions anywhere there's 2 or more diagonal lines intersecting. For example, you could drop a dominant horizontal, a dominant diagonal, and a dominant vertical. And that's usually the start of a good composition. So I could say my horizontal line is right here, where these series of diagonal lines intersect. I could drop a dominant vertical here if I chose. That would be my dominant vertical, and then I could just use one of these diagonal lines as a dominant diagonal line. I've dropped 3 lines, and I can play with this all I want. And like I said, the beautiful thing about the harmonic armature is that I don't have to worry about specific sized rectangles to work within. All right, let me bring up a root rectangle. All right, what you see on my screen is a root 2. And like I said, the dynamic symmetry system of design contains the root 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can go above root 5, but as Myron Barnstone says, most artists don't go beyond a root 5, so I'm not going to talk about it. But like I said, the difference between the harmonic armature and a root rectangle is that the rectangles, they are specific sized rectangles that allow the artist to break down the rectangle in order to create smaller versions of the original mother rectangle. What I mean by that is you have a root 2 as your main rectangle, but within that, right now I have divisions where I have a root 2 on the top left, on the right, lower left, and lower right. So I have 4 root 2s going horizontally right now. And that's coming from divisions here. So I have one here, 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 and here. Those are 4 root 2s going going horizontally. But I can continue to break down each one of these rectangles and create, again, a series of root 2s, but they're just smaller. If I break down this one in the left-hand corner, I now have 4 root 2s going horizontally again. And then I can continue to break this down and do the same thing in this smaller version up here. But again, it's a root 2. And I'll just drop a vertical there. So now again, I have 4 smaller root 2s inside this one larger here, but then it gets larger here, and then you have the main rectangle there. So you're just breaking down this rectangle to create smaller versions of itself. But when you do this, you can repeat divisions and repeat diagonal lines that have intervals that are based on the root 2. For example, let me just point this out a little bit more clear. I'm going to change it to red. Well, let me change it to blue. So I have this diagonal line here, but it's also repeated. It's the same diagonal line because you're working within a root 2 here. And then it's right here in the main diagonal line. Again, it's the same diagonal line, but it's running in intervals. And these intervals relate to the original rectangle. And you can do this in vertical divisions. For example, I can create a vertical division here on the canvas, and that's within that smaller root 2, but I can create one here as well. And again, it's in the center of this larger root 2, but again, I can create another vertical here, and this is in the mother root 2. And I can do it again here. So my divisions, my verticals that are repeating, they're all on specific intervals within that root 2. Hopefully this makes sense. You can do this with horizontal lines as well. I could drop a horizontal line here, and I have a horizontal line here, which is using the same division, but it's just in a different location because I'm breaking it down up here. But I have a main horizontal line there, but I could do it in any one of these root 2s. I could break this down and create a division, horizontal division. So I'm repeating divisions, but they are all on intervals within the rectangle. Hopefully this makes sense. I don't want to drag this out too long today. I just want to give the artist an idea of what the differences are within the two systems of design and how the artist is using them differently. For example, the artist would use the 14-line armature differently than they would a root rectangle. So hopefully this makes sense. If you have any questions about it, you can always drop me an email. And thanks for tuning in.